All right. Hey, welcome, folks. Mil-Spec Opsmic here. It's going to be your SITREP. It is 5/9/2024. Come to you live here from the great state of Texas in the Monkey Lounge. As we get into the deets of what's going on out there around the world, we're going to talk about a lot of different things, what I think the next big moves are, or what moves we are seeing happening right now around the world that will make a little bit more sense as to what we're really seeing. Hey, here's the other thing, too. Just before we get started, I did want to point out this show is actually sponsored by Satellite Phone Store. And if you go over to sat123.com, that's sat123.com/monkeyworks. And just go take a gander at what they have out there. We've got a major hurricane season expected starting June 1. And they're saying because of the transition between El Nino and La Nina that they're expecting a decrease in wind shear and warmer Atlantic temperatures. I can't imagine what the Gulf is going to be doing, but it's probably going to be pretty hot, warm waters. And of course, that feeds the storms. And then you've got what's happened just in terms of the tornadic activity is off the chains right now. So look, if you've been thinking about this and you want to get your family prepared and you haven't already done so, satellite phone is going to be your answer. Let me tell you, they've got some amazing deals over here at the Satellite Phone Store. You can get Inmarsat phones, and the phone actually is included in the plan. They've got the Iridium 9555. That's the one that I have, and it is amazing. Miss Monkey has the Inmarsat, but I've got the 9555, and I love it. And then, of course, they got the 9575, which is just an incredible phone. So they also have family plans. So if you want to check those out, you can get the twofers, or you can go for 3 and get really big savings. And of course, they've got the bivy sticks and a lot of other things in terms of ways to protect your assets with Faraday bags, etc. And listen, I will tell you, I just got my hands on this new satellite phone through Connecta Mobile. And it is, you want to talk about secure. If you're trying to get away from the iPhone, you want a platform that's going to allow you to basically have fully encrypted everything. This is what the government is going to, by the way. And the military uses them. Our governments use them around the world. It's actually manufactured in Finland, and it's amazing smartphone. So anyway, it's out there for you. Again, sat123.com/monkeyworks, sat123.com/monkeyworks, or give them a call, and they'll be more than happy to help you. You can dial 855-980-5830 and tell them Monkey sent you. All right, listen, let's get into the deets of what is going on out there as we start to kind of peel this banana back. We will kick it off over here in Skyglass, as always, sitting at 261. I believe that number is at maybe 281. It's a bit of an eye chart for me when I have to look at these screens. They can be kind of small sometimes. But I've already stripped out Text 2s, T38s, EC45s, all of the trainers. You're talking a little less than 150. Some things I do want to point out to you as we kind of get into this. Look at this. These high altitude mil-intel balloons, you're seeing them. Now, if you want to get a really good look, we just kick it off here to the side, and then they start to stand out as always. But you can see I've got 6 on my screen. Sorry, 1 over here, 3 right here in the center of the United States, and then 2 out over what looks to be kind of Georgia, Florida area. That isn't even scratching the surface. There are 46 of these airborne around the United States and abroad. I do know we've got 2 that are out here over the Caribbean. We've already seen 1 or 2 down here as well. So they are deployed all over the place. These are gathering intelligence on us and everybody else. They're listening to everything you do and everywhere you go, etc. So that's what the purpose of these are. They're not monitoring traffic from afar, okay? So, but let's do this. I do want to peel this back. Let's take a look at the tankers. 29 currently up of the KC-135s. Down a little further, we've got 8 more. Sorry, not E6. That would be B767-200 Pegasus. And you can see coast to coast. So very active. This is a very good indicator of fighters currently up. And then let's look at the other big number, 35 H-60s. Yeah, right there. Eastern seaboard is the brunt and the lion's share of most of them. Again, these are Blackhawks, by the way. All right, and let's see. I did want to point out some P8 activity down around Florida. Just notice this is live, and notice how many are down off the East Coast, down off of this area. That's because we've got the Chinese hanging out down here in this neck of the woods, and that's why we've got the Mill Intel balloons up as well. And so let's do this. I'm going to save that, add it to my quiver. All right, and then banana copters. We do have a couple on the move. I've seen them coming out of Central Texas, headed towards kind of the Arkansas neck of the woods. We've got some more up here as well. That's where we are. Now, let's, 3 R135s. We'll talk more about those in just a minute, but you'll notice this one is a regular. That's Top Cat R135, and then this is another R135. It's a Hoover. One of these, I think, is a W135. So, okay. Now, let me hide that, and we're going to back this up just a skosh, and we're going to get into the deets. Now, look at our watch list as we get into this. You're going to see we'll start it off over here in Europe. I'm going to hide the big column on the side there. Just notice that's Jake 17, I think it is, call sign. That's a U.S. asset looking very closely at probably Crimea. And then we've got low altitude. That's a drone that's, again, this is going to be on one of those pinch points we're going to talk about here in just a minute. And then notice the coming out of Algiers, I think it is, but that is Oman and their little G5 coming out of that location, headed back towards the Middle East. All right, you see that broken trace right there. And then, let's see, we'll get over here to CONUS, and I've got some trace lines for you. Main takeaways as we get into this, just notice you've got the R135s. That's going to be some banana copters. Notice 2 of them headed towards, coming out of what looks to be Oklahoma, maybe Texas, North Texas. And then just see these right here headed that way. That's a W135. That's what we're talking about, Cobra. 2 of those are up. We just talked about those. And then, of course, NOAA. A lot of NOAA flights. We've got the DOJ up. We've got the Marines up. So there's some of your other, let's see, we got an E2 currently up. So that's going to be like an AWACS. Notice it's over the northeast there towards DC. But the DOJ is on the move. It looks like we've got their Go team as well that's out and about. So, yeah, pretty active and busy. I've stripped a lot of stuff out because it just clogs up everything we're looking at. So, all right, let's talk about the Russians for a minute as we get into some of this deets. Just showing you that they are on the move, kind of rounding the horn, headed in and out of Kaliningrad. Keep in mind that the Russians currently have a nuclear, I guess, an exercise going on. And that's why we'll probably have more eyes on them now than we typically do, because they are moving a lot of nuclear assets around in preparation for this exercise that is about to take place. So these are going to be your drones, low altitude over the Mediterranean. That is very close to Benghazi and Tripoli, all right? And then we got our high altitude. That one is, again, pinch point into the Istanbul area. And then, of course, Israel, or that's probably not even Israel. That's probably us doing some drone stuff right to pretty much over Egypt, I think. That is kind of the border. That's Suez, again, pinch point. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Some stuff going on there over Bahrain. We did have the high altitude there coming out of Malta, which are going to be probably your Q4, Q9 drones. Q4 high altitude, Q9 drones up there, but not high altitude. Okay. All right. You can see a little bit of stuff there happening over the Philippines. And then the U.S. see some big transitions here. Looks like they're headed into Provo area, maybe down the southern border there near Tijuana, etc. But notice that one, right? Landing up there. I think that's pretty close to Provo, I think. And then into Denver, all right? All right, let's talk Intel. We'll start off here in the United States just to show you. We've got a flurry of activity out of Fort Hood. A little bit headed north, some of it down to the southern border. We've got a flurry coming out of Jacksonville. And that one looks to be headed, it looks like it's on the border between Ohio and Illinois. All right, we get over to Europe, and then look at this one here. This looks to be right over the Nord Stream. Okay, so got evidently looking very closely at the Baltic Sea, and then notice just a lot of activity going on around the Russian piece, right? Belarus, we're going to probably see more and more of that as this nuclear exercise and we get our eyes on everything. See this little move right here? Again, this is a drone, but the key to that is they are more than likely looking at Kosovo and Serbia. That is a big concern for the region, right? We got a lot of troops in that region. And then see this? Another pinch point right there near Gibraltar, low altitude. And then, of course, this stuff that is coming in and out of Iraq, out of Israel, pretty hot and heavy. The one out of Iraq is interesting because it's flying out over Saudi and then heads south with a broken trace. Again, intelligence community. And then, of course, down towards the Philippines. And I'm looking at Australia down under. I got nothing. All right, let's go to R135s. Starting off here in Europe, and then just notice, again, they're just getting very heavy looks at everything going on in the region because of this nuclear snap count exercise that Russia's getting ready to do. And then, of course, you can see us looking closely at Crimea. Again, these are R135s, right? So they're looking very closely at Israel, right, as we withhold weapons from them, which is just insane that we are doing this to them. And we're going to get everything we deserve, folks, 100%. And then look at the U.S. Some interesting one. That's a straight line looking sideways, little route back and forth. I don't know what they were looking at, but that's an interesting flight. Got the little snake tongue looking down at the Texas border. And then this one right here, maybe, remember we just moved some intel there to the north. Maybe these are all aligned. And then, of course, side looking, right? So I don't know what they're looking for, but anyway. Let's talk AWACS, advance warning, right? They handle all kinds of different things. Look at, again, the same area we saw the R135, the intel community, the drones, and then, of course, running right along the southern border, and then a flurry of activity over the D.C. northeast area. Very, very concerned. Obviously, this has been a trend as of late. So I think they're worried somebody's going to pop something off here. Now, look at this one headed north towards Norway, around out over the water, and then these little round, tight man-in-the-middle circles over Poland and over Germany, etc. And then down towards Constanta. And again, Moldova, that is a Russian-occupied, I say occupied, but a very pro-Russian environment they believe is about to go to the extreme here. Again, that's another worry for them. And of course, in and out of the Philippines, it looks like. And then we get down a little further to Australia. And it's been very active off that coastline there of Australia. And they're probably looking at the ships, honestly. All right, now let's take a gander at the E6. Remember, Navy bird talks to our nukes on the subs. Notice that one going down to the USVI, right? And then just notice up here to the Canadian border, kind of a strange location for them to be, and then covering both coastlines. So anyway, that's going to be your Navy E6. So let's get back over here to this. Let's get into the deets that we're going to talk about in our news today. This piece is interesting. These are pinch points. Now, we've been talking a lot about command and control of these regions. And as you look here, just notice right here, remember Djibouti is where we have bases. The Russians have bases. The Chinese have a base there. We'll look at that here in a minute. But that's a big concern. Pinch point right here. So you could control a lot of things going in and out of the Red Sea. Remember, Suez Canal, major pinch point. If they are unable to get ships or anything through this, that means they have to go all the way around Africa. All right. Again, Cape of Good Hope, that's what they would say a choke point, pretty open down below that. But if people are rounding this area, that can be a point of contention as well. This, we just talked about the low altitude drones there in the Strait of Gibraltar. Then you've got this one here, the Turkish Straits. If you get into these areas closer, you will see, of course, the Panama Canal. That's another one, right? You just saw us put special forces down there. We just put a multitude of assets down in this region, because if this gets taken over by the Chinese, let's say they take over port operations, or they do some Silk Road project and they end up having a command presence here, then the U.S. can't get things around to this side. That means the U.S. has to go all the way around the world. When you got all the oil coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, they need to be able to get through this to feed all these other areas, okay? So that is that aspect. Let's just take a closer look at these choke points. Again, here is your Suez Canal as it comes straight through here. And if they can't get through this, they have to go all the way around. And that takes a long time, a lot of fuel, and it's not good. You control this. You control everything headed around the Middle East, in essence, okay? And that's a lot of that is oil, okay? Remember, we've got a lot of presence right here, okay? So when you see all this stuff going on in Israel, just note that Suez Canal is here. Another pinch point, we get down here through the Red Sea, and then you talk about this pinch point right here. This is Djibouti. This is where we'll talk about that a little further in just a second. You go over to this side. This is the Gulf of Oman, and this is the area that the Iranians keep their pirates keep taking over and hacking ships and taking control of oil ships and stuff here in this region. Again, that would stop everything going in and out of the Persian Gulf. That's a pretty wide one compared to, and this one too, compared to places like this. But then look at this one here. Remember, Russia comes all the way through this. They feed everything in and out into Russia, oil and cargo, etc., across the Black Sea. If you were to control this pass right here, okay, you would stop everything Russia had, right? So you see us building up assets in here. You can see why, right? So again, that is what I think we are watching happen around the world, is that we're seeing the Russians and the Chinese, as well as us, setting up shop around these pinch points. Control the supply, you control the world, okay? So let's talk about what is going on in terms of the presence of the U.S. forces. Okay, we're going to look at a couple things. One, we know in Europe there are about 100,000. We know when we bailed out of Afghanistan, we pulled 100,000 out of that region. But from a Europe perspective, Middle East is supposedly very low. And the numbers are probably higher because we've been watching them get deployed to the Middle East here over the last 3 or 4 months pretty heavily. We're watching the flow of goods in terms of things going in via cargo ship and rail, etc. And it's all desert camo stuff, all right? So the Middle East is kind of the focal point. That's where we see the ramp up. You go over here to the Indo-Pacific side, there are 375,000 U.S. military personnel across at least 66 distinct defense sites in the Asian Pacific side, okay? That's a lot, all right? Let me go down just a little, well, actually, let me go up a little further, and we'll just kind of get a general idea of why this is so important, but and why China is basically making the stance. I think you're going to find out that the U.S. is actually the aggressor here in a lot of the cases, even when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, et cetera. The U.S. seems to be the ones busting people's chops, all right? So look at this. This is the Middle East. They're saying roughly, and this is as of June 2023, it's higher than this now because we've been watching the deployments take shape. 30,000 troops throughout the Middle East is what they say. Now, at one time, they're saying that we had more than 100,000 troops, as we just talked about, in Afghanistan, and more than 160,000 in Iraq. Those numbers obviously just completely got depleted, but it looks like we're redeploying them into the areas, all right? Now, especially with all the stuff going on with the pinch points, all right? Because if the Russians and them take over these areas, we are going to have a really hard time moving anything, especially when it comes to our naval fleet, all right? So we talked pinch points, all right? Let's go back to this just for a second. You can see the locations of these pinch points here. You get over into this area. Now, look at this. I'm going to take you over to the ship side of the Navy. And what do you notice? That they are also in very close proximity to all of the pinch points, right? Not a coincidence, okay? So let's get back over to this, and we'll get over to this. Well, actually, we finished this piece out right here. But Europe, 100,000, I think, is what they were saying, but I think that has actually increased. And you can see at one point in the early 1950s, there were over 400,000 troops in Europe. So that's pretty big, all right? But look at, by the numbers, if you look at the 10 countries that host 87% of all of our active duty U.S. troops overseas, Japan. So as we were saying, you know, we're not seeing all of the traffic headed into the Asian Pacific. Well, it's because they're already there. So we don't see a drawdown. What we're seeing is just kind of a shifting of assets, moving things, especially the 155 millimeter things, artillery, et cetera, from South Korea over to Europe. But a lot of this stuff, I mean, you can see how many troops we got in Japan. UK is kind of small. Italy's small. Germany is our second biggest location, which we see with Ramstein, right? Okay, now let's talk about the Ruskies for a minute. Some of this is going to be outdated, and I want to point this out to you just so you know. You can see these are prior Russian bases inside Ukraine. I don't think they're still there. I think most of those are gone. This one probably is, I mean, that's still good because that's up into the Russia side of the house. But you can see Mariupol, they're still there. You get them down into this general region. Probably, I don't really know. Crimea, we know that's a major stronghold for them. But you'll notice we see a lot of the Russian flights headed down into Georgia and this general area. Very big presence there. They are also here in Turkey. U.S. is here, and I think down over here. All right. But you get into Syria, you start to see them. I'm going to show you a map that's got a little more fidelity to what's kind of stacking up over here in Syria. But we already talked about the Iranians are hot and heavy in this area, but you can see Russia is as well. And then, of course, right here, Benghazi, this is an area that we pulled out of. They basically took over our base operation location. Probably did the same over in Afghanistan, et cetera. But you can see they used to be very hot and heavy in this area. We know they're big here. This is Kaliningrad, this general area. Poland stuff, Poland stuff, probably not there anymore. But notice that is right on the border. And I say not there anymore. They never were there to my knowledge. This is the border. And you can see the other piece where I was going to point out is up here. When you start talking about Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, I don't know that those are still there either. But they have been on the move. You get down into Africa and you can see pretty hot and heavy. Again, U.S. is here in Djibouti, Russians in Djibouti, Chinese are in Djibouti. And then also we know we just talked about over here in Niger, the fact that that's right here, that the Russians are set up shop with the Wagner Group in Niger. In fact, they're sharing a base location with the United States. That's probably not going to go well. All right. And then, of course, we've got this down here. So you can see they're pretty far reaching in terms of where they are set up around the world. And again, many of them are very close to pinch points. And this, I don't think this is accurate. Something about this doesn't seem legit to me. I don't see them being in Alaska. Like I said, I think this is outdated in terms of the map. All right. Okay. Now, this map shows countries where China seeks overseas bases. We already talked about the fact that they are down here into the Caribbean, but this is, notice Cuba, right? We had Cold War stuff. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis with the Soviets, but it looks like China is now standing up shop. We know they're doing some Silk Road stuff there. We already know, again, this is, I don't think, up to date because China has a lot of stuff going on here in the Middle East, as does, in the Central America realm, as does Russia. And we know they're up here in this general area as well. But then notice we looked at the Ruskies were down in this general side of the house. China's setting up shop there. Again, we talked about, let me go back down. We talked about Djibouti right here, right? And then notice that China is seeking to get some base operations going here in UAE, in that general area. They're in Pakistan, etc. So you can see they are really on the move. But as you start looking at what the U.S. has asset-wise, let me see if I've got, well, I don't show that particular. Let me do this. I'm going to go over to the news headline piece. I'm going to go take this away because that's another image. And we're going to talk briefly. All right, let me hit pause right here. Let me back it up. This one is important because you look at where the U.S. forces are out in the Asian Pacific. I just mentioned the fact that we've got 350,000 troops throughout that area. But look at this. I mean, we are all over the Philippines. We're into Taiwan. We know that. We're into Japan and Okinawa and South Korea. So we've got a very, very, very large presence in the region. So pay close attention to that because as we look at China on the move, I think they have realized, hey, all we have to do is control the supply. Right? So, all right, let's get over here to Flashbang. He is on the move. And just so you know, if we look at, we'll look at the NOTAMs here in just a minute, but he's headed to California. And if you've been watching him lately, he seems to be heavily sedated. Heavily sedated. I don't know if they've got him on lithium or what, but he is, you listen to him talk and he just doesn't make any sense. I mean, he never made any sense, but he really isn't making a lot of sense. You watched him on Howard Stern. Of course, I didn't watch any of his stuff. I just saw the clips of it, but he's just mumbling around and definitely doesn't seem to be his well, I don't know. He's worse than his normal self. Let's just put it that way. Okay, again, looks like he's headed to the north up here. He's headed to California. And we get over here, you can see these larger boxes are Flashbang on the move and over the next 3 days. So just eyes on. That looks like that's kind of where he is headed. West Coast, and then he's coming back over here to the East Coast. But all right, let's back up and see if I got anything that catches my eye on the map. Missile boxes, etc. It looks like we've got some large boxes here between Iceland and Norway and Sweden. And then you get into the Middle East, and of course you can see this is all completely covered up. And then Saudi's got a lot of things happening there in Saudi. This area is the area in question. Again, pretty tight little pass through. The Yemenis, those are the guys, the Houthis, that's again, a terrorist proxy organization from Iran that continues to take shots at the ships going through the area. So, okay, let's get on over here. Let's talk Biggs Army Airfield for a quick minute. And just to show you that we've had a couple airplanes come in, Sun Country and Sierra Pacific 737, smaller aircraft. This one came in from Indy. This one came in from San Juan, Puerto Rico. More than likely, they are flying migrants out, and this one here in case in point headed up to St. Paul. And let me go down a little further. This one's headed back to Tucson. Now remember too, there is a camp in Tucson a little white tent area outside of the airport that they maintain a small amount of migrants. But that is also their home base operations, so they could have just come in empty after they flew up to Indy. All right. And then over to Dover, we've got a little more activity. You got some Atlas Airs coming inbound to Dover from Dallas-Fort Worth. Probably doesn't have anything on it. But UPS is inbound, coming from their home base operations in Louisville. And let's see where they're outbound. Look at National Cargo. This is headed down to Guadalajara, 747. So again, remember, we're talking about these pinch points. We're talking about a command presence. We've watched things going into XPO Honduras, Guatemala. Now we've got Guadalajara. I'm seeing a lot of movement of things going down into Central America. All right. And then we've got this one outbound. That's a camber flight. That's troops, RZE Poland. Like I said, I'm seeing us build back up in terms of the Middle East assets. And then that UPS flight that's inbound is also headed to RZE Poland. So looks like they are getting the stuff that just got released. While we hold Israel stuff, we are shipping out things, which, by the way, let me just do this. I want to back up for just a hot minute. I want to take us to this other slide, because this is, we've paused weapon shipments to Israel. 1,800 2,000-pounders and 1,700 500-pound bombs are being withheld from Israel. So as we watch us push all of the stuff into RZE without any delay, we're giving nothing to Israel. All right. Now, this is going to be Ramstein, right? And you can just see pretty active and busy. A lot of camber flights coming inbound, 747s. And then you could see leaving there, going back to Savannah, Georgia. And this one is leaving, going to RZE. So we're seeing a pretty significant uptick when the funding came through of stuff getting pushed into the forward operating base in Poland. All right, this is going to be the Brits. You can just see very heavily concentrated here in the middle. That's Europe, headed over, and that looks to be Sofia. All right, so kind of the eastern front of Europe. Pretty busy, a lot of flights there from the Brits. And then we look at the camber flights, and just notice the amount of stuff going in and out of the Middle East into Europe. Very active and busy. A lot of 747s, a lot of troop movers. Right? Now, RZE Poland, big thing, just notice as we go down the line here, this is forward operating base. Notice the camber flight coming inbound. And we go over here to this side, just notice Caleta's leaving, going to Hong Kong from there. So that's probably an empty flight. Western Global, destination unknown, but a lot of large 747s in and out of RZE. Okay, Omni, only one, Yokota Air Base to Seattle. And then National Cargo, 747s, JFK, Anchorage to JFK, Anchorage to Hong Kong. So this is probably, a lot of this is commercial related stuff on this particular round. And then Western Global, 747, RZE to destination unknown. We back it up, don't even see it on the map. Okay, now we're talking about Syria. This is going to be pretty brief, but just to give you, this is the eastern Syria side. This is Iraq. Just notice the U.S. flags now. This is the latest up-to-date Russian flags here. Russia, Iran, Russia, okay. And very heavily occupied by Iran inside that area. And then, of course, the United States this is why we're seeing F-22s being deployed, as well as a lot of desert camo stuff, because this is probably going to be the next front, okay? All right, speaking of drones and things of that nature, this is the ultra long endurance glider like drone. It is not a high altitude. It's actually a prop job. You can see the prop on the very front of this aircraft, but it's got a huge hang time, 80 hours. And they're saying it's an ultra long endurance intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platform. So ISR much like what we already look at when we talk about the Intel community, the R135s, et cetera. This one has the ability to conduct all of that stuff. Same thing with our Q4s, Q9s, right? But anyway, this you can see a little eye down here on the bottom of the aircraft. There's your prop job. So that tells you it's not going to be, high altitude because it is a prop job. But they discovered it when they were looking at one of the hangars, Hangar 5, which used to house the Global Hawks in the past. It's a undisclosed location in UAE. So anyway, there you have it. Like that one got out there. All right, let's talk El Gora for just a minute. It is still active. You can see the multi-force call sign taken off. That's actually a U.S. Air Force asset, but it is, I say Air Force, U.S. military asset. It's like a little BE-20, and it looks like it took off back and forth. So still pretty frequent right there. Again, that is right across the border from Gaza. And then there's Djibouti. And I don't really see too much going on in terms of the U.S. stuff. I've got one flight in and out. That's a 747 headed to Kuwait. But again, this is very close proximity to the Russians and the Chinese. All right. And so we just have to pay close attention to it because actually I said Djibouti. That's Doha. My bad. When they zoom in on something, I see the JD, and for some reason, I just sounded Djibouti. This is Doha. And again, this is an area right here where the Chinese are trying to stand up shop. Kuwait, so the flight went from Doha into Kuwait. Djibouti's down here. And again, you talk about a very tight pinch point. And this is why we're so concerned when you start getting a small area, which is not, super duper large. You've got U.S. assets, you have military assets, Chinese assets, as well as Russian assets, all camping in the same area. It's a recipe for disaster. So anyway, all right, listen, that's going to do it for our SITREP today. Apologize for the mess ups there. I just was getting ahead of myself. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll see you on the weekend over at Patreon. And then, of course, we'll be in the Q&A immediately following this one for the live show with the Patreon and the member folks. So that's it. Stay frosty. Keep that powder dry. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.
Thanks for watching. Head over to the online store to check out the latest gear and products by scanning the QR code on screen now or go to monkeywerxus.com.